college sports are a major arms race these days, and the Big 12 Conference understands that better than most. Brett Yormark has been working to open up opportunities for schools to generate extra revenue. The most recent iteration, though, it's just not going to fly for the BYU Cougars.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch. Coming up on today's show, we dig into private capital. The Big 12 is taking on a new partnership with Redbird Private Capital, but does that mean it's going to fly for BYU? We'll delve into that, and then we will talk with Utah Tech head coach Lance Anderson. BYU season opening opponent is their southerly neighbor from St. George, the Utah Tech Trailblazers. What to understand about Utah Tech and how do they approach a game, the magnitude of facing off against BYU and Provo. Coach Anderson will explain all that and more coming up on today's show. And as always, thank you to all of you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. All right, if you missed the news yesterday, Ross Dellinger, I think, was the first person to report this, that the Big 12 has partnered with Redbird Capital and Weatherford Capital, finalizing a three-pronged package, as he says, deliver an infusion of capital, at least $12.5 million to the league office to drive commercial development and business growth. It also is offering schools an opt-in capital credit line of up to $30 million each. And it's also creating a strategic business partnership that could pay off when the conference next goes to market for its media rights contract. So the conference is taking on $12.5 million in private capital. Obviously, as they said, that's going to go towards efforts to generate extra revenue for member schools. Great. Go for it, Brett Yormark. Keep working your magic. Do as much as you can to help BYU and the other 15 member schools to generate as much money as they can. The big bugaboo in all of this is an opt-in capital credit line of $30 million each. Now, on the surface, man, $30 million bucks. Think about what you could do with that if you're a college program. And trust me, every program, BYU is not an exception here, is looking for every avenue to generate extra money. But the simple fact of the matter is that Brian Santiago has already laid the groundwork for why BYU will not take on this private capital line, because he told Derek Anderson, who has a podcast called the Divot Podcast, and I don't know Derek from Adam, but I thought he did a really, really fine job when he talked with BYU's athletic director. And Brian Santiago laid it down the law, essentially, and said that BYU will not be taking on private equity money. Now, you're probably saying, well, what's private equity, Jake? This is private capital. The circumstances essentially are the same, because private capital, while it's a little different than private equity, as it says, this is a credit line of $30 million. It's essentially handing you a $30 million credit card as an athletic department and saying, hey, you can spend this money, but obviously there's going to be a return on that. So that's I think the crux of this matter is that BYU, while it may be enticing to take on that money, it's just not in BYU's best interest to do this, because BYU, I can tell you just from personal experience and knowing people that have worked inside and around the university, it values its independence, and especially when it comes to BYU athletics. They do not want the proverbial fox in the hen house who suddenly is exerting control over BYU athletics and forcing them to do things that they would rather not do. So BYU, from everything I understand, will eschew this opportunity, even as enticing as it is. And the funny thing about this is this was voted on last Thursday, according to Ross Dellinger. Finalized this agreement has been under discussion for more than 2 years. But as they also mentioned here, they don't expect actually the majority of the Big 12 schools to take on this deal. That's the interesting part about this. It says that schools have 1 year to make a decision on the one-time capital infusion. Those within the conference believe that as few as 2 and as many as a half dozen programs plan to take the money, which comes at a rate of just south of 10%. So you're telling me between 1/8 and, in that case, up to 6 schools, like we're talking the minority of schools are going to take on this opportunity. Now, some may be hurting for cash more than others. I can think of a program like Iowa State that it's readily apparent that the Cyclones are in pretty dire straits financially. We already know that Utah has agreed with Otro capital to put together a private equity deal. It's creating a whole new entity they're calling it, I think it's Utah Brands and Initiatives or something like that, to generate extra revenue for that. And obviously they're expecting it could generate up to $500 million for the University of Utah. Now that deal is still not finalized, even though it was said it was going to be done first quarter of 2026. We're well into quarter two and it's still not done. So I'm very interested to see where that goes. Personal opinion on that matter. Now, the most interesting, I think, facet of this is the third of the three-prong approach here. And what that is a strategic business partnership, as they say, could pay off when the conference next goes to market for its media rights contract. Well, how is that going to pay off, Jake? You're probably asking. Well, if you read this story, Redbird is a New York-based investment management firm with $15 billion in assets and an array of companies within its portfolio, including a company called Paramount Global. Okay, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yeah, Paramount holds ownership of CBS. And oh, by the way, Paramount is also in line to acquire TNT, who are, two of the more influential TV networks in college sports today. TNT, ever since they lost the NBA contract, has been more and more on the climb to adding more and more of these partnerships with various conferences. They obviously took on a lot of Big 12 basketball games. CBS has done the same thing. In 2030, when the new media rights contract comes up for the Big 12 to renegotiate, they're currently partnered with ESPN and Fox. Could this deal with Redbird Capital put them in a deal where CBS and TNT become the home of Big 12 football, Big 12 basketball, and other Big 12 entities? I am very genuinely curious to see where this all ends up. I'd be hard-pressed to think that the Big 12, after how much they partnered with ESPN and all that they have put on ESPN Plus in particular, would be hard-pressed, I think, to completely divorce themselves from the worldwide leader. But, hey, if the money talks, you take it. So this is a very, very interesting deal. Let's be very clear about this. I understand the allure for a program, no matter your BYU or anybody else in the Big 12 thinking, oh man, $30 million on a credit card for us. Think about what we could do with that money. I completely get all of that. But I think the more important part of all of this is, it's BYU. They've already set down that they're not going to be one of these schools taking on that money, nor does BYU really need it, because BYU's got some very deep-pocketed boosters. Look no further than BYU's NIL prowess and how renowned they are in their ability to attract talent. And yes, it comes down in some respects to dollars and cents. Now, BYU also factors in the fact that, yes, they are Brigham Young University. Yes, they are the flagship school of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have a very public honor code that if you are a student athlete there, you still are expected to abide by the principles and the guidelines set forth in the honor code. So they're not completely revolutionizing things in Provo, but the money that's been flowing into BYU, that is revolutionary. And I don't think, like I said, BYU needs $30 million. If they needed $30 million, I think they could call up a handful of people and raise that money if needed. The bigger part about this to me is if Redbird can absolutely deliver come 2030, 2031, when these media rights deals come back around, can they push the Big 12's number to somewhere north of 50, 70, heck, $100 million? $100 million seems pie in the sky-ish, because that's going to be the top end of what the Big Ten and the SEC are commanding at the end of their current media rights deal. But if you want to keep up with the Joneses, it seems like everybody is trying to do, especially when it comes to the Power Four, especially in the case of the Big 12 and the ACC. This Redbird Capital deal, while the vast majority of the Big 12 schools are not going to take on the credit line they're offering, they're partnering with the eyes down the line to say, hey, this could be a strategic partnership that could pay major dividends down the line, and you better hope that it does, because in this day and age of the arms race that is college sports, it feels like more and more the SEC and the Big Ten are separating themselves, becoming essentially the Big Two. The Big 12's got to do everything it can to stay within, I just call it just touching distance of those two conferences, and this Redbird Capital deal in the end could be the partnership that pushes them into that territory and maybe makes it a Big Three. I guess that's the ultimate hope you have if you're BYU and the rest of the Big 12 conference. All right, coming up next, have a great opportunity to catch up with Utah Tech head coach Lance Anderson. BYU's season opening opponent are the Utah Tech Trailblazers. What does he make of his matchup against BYU? Who are the players to know from Utah Tech? And How is a school like Utah Tech faring in this day of NIL and the transfer portal, and how do they compete, quite literally? We'll get into all that next with Lance Anderson coming up right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, FanDuel is here for you guys to take care of you when it comes to the NBA playoffs. It's absolutely a crazy time out there with the NBA playoffs ongoing. Every possession, every game. If you want to get closer to the action, FanDuel is a great offer to get you started here. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Simple as that. You bet $5, it wins. You get $150 in your account. Seems like a pretty sweet deal right there, right? The best part is you can use FanDuel during the playoffs because that's everything you need right there in one place to stay apprised of everything going on when it comes to the playoffs. You can check stats, trends, matchups before making your picks, which makes the whole experience feel a lot more informed. And whether you're looking at player props, just following your favorite stars, your favorite teams, it adds a whole nother level of excitement to every game along the way. And it's really just an easy app to navigate. It makes playoff basketball even more engaging from start to finish. So whether you believe that Oklahoma City is going to just steamroll their way to their second straight NBA title, you think it's going to be a matchup of San Antonio and OKC in the West, you think Boston is on their way in the East, whatever you're into, go check it out. Head to FanDuel.com to get started today. That's all courtesy of FanDuel. Play your game. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. As always, I would encourage you, if you're a true everydayer, to join the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club. Go to lockedoncougars.supercast.com. That's lockedoncougars.supercast.com. Got a bevy of different features available for you guys. Audio ad-free episodes, our exclusive Discord server access. If you want the texting service we have, it's all available now by going to lockedoncougars.supercast.com or clicking the link in the show notes below. Pleased now to welcome in Utah Tech head coach Lance Anderson. Coach Anderson, you guys are biting off what I would consider to be a very, very strong start to the season. Maybe bite off more than you can chew. Montana State, then BYU, which ostensibly you're here to talk about, and then, oh, by the way, MSU's arch rival, Montana. What a start to your season upcoming.
It really is. I mean, we've got probably the two top teams in the Big Sky Conference. We got the defending FCS national champions in Montana State. And then, obviously BYU, which, many people believe should have been a playoff team last year. And, regardless, had a heck of a season.
Now, you've coached at all levels. Now you're working at the FCS level right now, but you worked at Stanford in the Pac-10/Pac-12 era. You've worked at Boise State and various other Division I programs. Give me a sense right now, how vast is the gulf between the FCS, FBS, and even the Power Four, in your opinion?
I think, again, with NIL and the transfer portal, I think maybe the separation between each of those levels does continue to grow, because I think as kids grow and develop and prove themselves, to be good football players, they're going to try to move up. And whether that means from going to Division II to FCS, or that's, FCS, up to the FBS level, it's just inevitable. And I think that was just very evident with the NFL draft this weekend, where normally you'll see quite a few FCS players sprinkled in there. And I think I don't know if it was day 2 or day 3 that the first FCS player was picked, but there were a lot of kids who went early in the draft who started their career at FCS schools. So I do believe, because of the portal and NIL, that separation does continue to grow. But at all levels, there are a lot of good football players out there, and that's why you see that movement between levels with different players.
Obviously, you guys are going to face off against BYU, and that's what we cover here on this show heavily. But give me a sense, your overall thought process as you get ready to face off against the Cougars.
I think it's a big challenge for us. They are a really good football team, and to play a team like that early in the season, it really shows you a little bit as a team, like where you are, the things that you need to work on, the things that you need to improve, because it's going to help prepare you for the rest of the season. But playing a game like that is something that our kids get very excited about. The Utah Tech fan base gets very excited about that. Just to be able to play on a national stage against a top ranked FBS opponent, it's a great opportunity for our program, and we're gonna embrace those positives and really look forward to just going up to Provo and having a chance to compete.
I want to reference back to something you mentioned earlier, NIL. At the FCS level, you mentioned the fact that a lot of guys in the draft may have started their careers at the FCS level, but due to NIL and opportunities in the transfer portal, they move up. How did your program work in terms of how did you retain most of the guys you felt like you might retain out of the portal? Like, how did things go for you guys with that?
Since I've been here, the couple of years that I've been here, I mean, we have lost a handful of players each year to the portal. It seems like, those guys who play well for us, and who have, quite a bit of eligibility left, those guys have moved on. And I certainly can't blame them because they're playing, at a bigger school on a bigger stage. And a lot of them are being very well paid through NIL. And, again, I certainly can't blame them for that. At Utah Tech, we haven't quite got to that level yet of being able to offer NIL. I know a lot more schools are doing that at the FCS level. A lot of schools are doing that in the Big Sky. So that's something we definitely need to work towards. I think that will help us retain some of these players. But again, when we're losing guys to UCLA and Wake Forest, Utah State, things like that, we're going to have a hard time beating those programs. And, it's just inevitable that, some of the guys that play well for us are going to move on. That's just the, day and age that we are in college football. And when that happens, we've got to go out and find a replacement for those guys.
Philosophically, are you pretty open with your guys about the reality of the situation, saying, hey, if you break out here, you're gonna have an opportunity to jump up a level? Do you lay it out for them and explain, hey, I understand what you might be considering doing?
Exactly. I think in this day and age, you have to do that. I think you have to be honest and realistic with the kids. I think even in the recruiting process, I think you have to be open to those things because, that's one of the things a lot of kids want to know is like, hey, coach, if I come there and play well, what do you think about me moving on? And I think you have to just embrace that. That's part of the game now. And we did have some kids last year that went in the transfer portal and then didn't get the offers that they would like. And some of those guys we were able to bring back. There were actually some that we weren't able to just because we ended up filling their spots. And I think that's just the reality of it now that, kids are going to test the market. And if they have a chance for something bigger and better and have a chance to profit, they're going to do that. But I think as coaches too, we have to be open to the possibility that, hey, some of these guys may not find what they're looking for, and we've got to welcome them back if we have an opportunity. I mean, we got to be aggressive though. Once they enter, we got to go out and see if we can replace them with someone. But if we have something open and guys want to come back, I don't think in this day and age you can hold a grudge. You got to welcome them back because you're trying to build the best football team you possibly can.
I've had it described to me as a big old game of musical chairs, and if you don't get the right chair when offered to you, you can end up without one very quickly.
That's exactly right, and that is the kind of the thing that's amazing about it. It just happens so fast. It's not like the old days with the recruiting process where you really had time to build relationships with kids. You had time to get to know them, their families, find out a little bit about their backgrounds, what their goals and ambitions are. It happens very fast now, and you've got to be prepared to move quickly when that portal's open.
Okay, back to BYU for just one more question, at least for this circumstance. When it comes to facing off against a Power 4 opponent or an FBS opponent, do you treat it any differently than one of you said Montana State, Montana? You're facing some of the best teams in the Big Sky, if not the entire FCS. But do you treat these games against upper division foes, FBS or Power 4, any different than the FCS games you play?
I don't think we really can. I think our preparation throughout the week will be the same. We'll prepare for them just like any other opponent. And then, we kind of have to game plan for them like we would any other opponent. It's just you're playing against a really good football team. And so you have to be very conscious of, how do we best match up? What gives us the best chance? And so, you might have to be a little bit unique in your approach, both offensively, defensively, and special teams, just because, the possible, gap in talent, things like that. But that's why you got to find the best ways you can to emphasize, our strengths, the things that we're good at, and maybe try to take advantage of something we see where maybe that's not their strength. And that's the challenge against a very talented team.
All right, coming up next, I want to narrow in a little bit on your team. Cougar fans obviously want to get a little better feel for what Utah Tech has on your roster. And we'll get to that next as Locked On Cougars rolls on with his opponent preview, talking about the Utah Tech Trailblazers. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Please continue to subscribe, rate, and review, and share the show with your family and friends if you've enjoyed. It's original daily BYU content you'll find on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I appreciate all your patronage and your support. Continuing on now with Utah Tech head coach Lance Anderson. And Coach, you have a local product as your starting quarterback in Bronson Barbin. And I know there are a bunch of Cougar fans who are down there in Southern Utah who will have an idea who this young man is. How important is it for you to get as much local talent into play for the Trailblazers as you can?
I think it's very important. I think there's good football down here in the St. George area. And in the time I've been here these 2 years, there have been a number of St. George kids who've been, very solid contributors for us. And the thing that's, kind of consistent with those guys are, they've got great work ethics. They're kids who care about the game. They go about things the right way. And that's why I think when we see kids in the St. George area that can play at the FCS level, we want to get them to Utah Tech. I think a lot of those kids too take pride in the community representing the St. George area, and I think they're very excited about trying to build Utah Tech into a winning program. And even we branch out from Region 9, the St. George area, I think recruiting in the state of Utah is very important to us. I know there's a lot of Division I football teams. There's a lot of competition, but we want to do a good job recruiting the state of Utah. I think there's a lot of talent in the state of Utah. There's really good high school coaching in the state of Utah. Snow College is one of the top junior college programs in the country. So I think there are a lot of kids in the state of Utah that can play at the FCS level, and we want to get those kids to Utah Tech.
All right, Coach, in a previous iteration of BYU staff, I'm not going to name the coach because they haven't authorized me to say this, but I was told that you were the thorn in the side of every Utah football program. I'm talking about the state of Utah because of what you did at Stanford and coming into the state of Utah and pulling talent out of the state. Have you been able to, I know the FCS level is a little different than coaching at Stanford or Boise State, et cetera, but have you been able to kind of translate that, I guess, on a smaller scale to what you're doing with Utah Tech and mining the state for talent once again?
So obviously, I've been very familiar with Utah football for a long time. Like just, growing up in Idaho, neighboring state, very, very familiar. Then even during my time at Idaho State, I recruited in the state of Utah. Yeah. While I was at Utah State, I was the coach on our staff who recruited the state of Utah. And then during my time at Stanford, being there 16 years, at Stanford, we recruit the whole country. Yeah. So I had big recruiting areas, but Utah was one of my areas, and it was a very productive area for us. We got a lot of good football players out of the state of Utah that were really good players for us at Stanford. So just being so familiar with the state, understanding and knowing a lot of the coaches here, understanding the kind of football that's played here in the state of Utah, I think it's definitely helped just being so familiar, with this state and this area. And that's why a big priority for me is like recruiting the state of Utah. We got to get Utah kids here. And so each recruiting period for us, it's a priority for me that we get our coaches out to all the Utah high schools, that we get there as much as we can, and we establish good relationships. The thing that's probably most frustrating is as a head coach, though, there are a lot more restrictions on, how many times you can visit a high school and things like that. So that's what's frustrating, especially now getting ready to go into our spring recruiting period. And now I'm only able to visit a high school once during the months of December, January, and the spring period. So it's like, I went to all these schools in December and January. I can't go back in the spring. So that's what's frustrating. But yeah, doing a great job in the state of Utah is very important to me. And we want to get Utah kids to Utah Tech.
All right, I asked about some of your individual players. I already kind of referenced Bronson Barbin, but he's a big guy as a quarterback, 6'4", 215 pounds. He could be playing defensive end, linebacker. What makes him so effective on offense, in your opinion?
Bronson's got, a really strong arm. He's got a great tool set for playing the quarterback position. He's athletic. He can move around and buy time in the pocket. He's a capable runner. One of the things you'll see from Bronson too is, he's not going to shy away from contact. If he needs to run over a guy, he'll run over a guy. And just the quarterback position here in general, I think we've got some good competition there. In addition to Bronson, we have Deacon Hill, who's a transfer from Iowa, who started 4 games 2 years ago before being injured, missed all of last year with an injury. We've also added CJ Tiller to our quarterback room, who started his career at Boise State, was at Utah State last year as the backup quarterback there. So I think between Bronson, Deacon, and CJ, we've got a great quarterback competition going on, and we're excited to see who emerges as the starter in the fall.
So did that battle rage throughout spring then, essentially?
It really has. And so, I mean, we're not able to declare a starter right now. That's going to go into the fall. And I think all three of those guys did some really good things in spring practice for us.
Now, as I understand, Asa Chapman was a really nice, I guess, find in a way, but he emerged really well down the stretch last season. What made him so effective at running back for you guys?
Asa, really had a good freshman year for us. Does a great job running the football. He has really good vision, good speed. He could make some people miss. I think one of the things that he did a great job of last year is not only did he run the ball well, but he caught the ball very well out of the backfield. Had a number of receptions for us, had a number of big plays in the pass game. So just, that versatility of, hey, being able to turn around and hand him the football and him make people miss and make some big plays, but also be able to get the ball to him in the pass game is a great thing. He's a big weapon for us.
Now, I didn't get to watch every game of yours last year. I know Steve Johnson, your SID, he knows I keep a keen eye on Utah Tech because I got family connections to the St. George area. So I like to catch as much as I can. And I remember which game it was last year, but I was watching a game, and I remember seeing this guy pop up on the screen. He's one of your star defensive players in Dalen Love. And like I said, I don't remember what game it was, but I was like, who is that guy? Because he was just all over the place. So how good can this young man be in Dalen Love?
Well, I think he's got a huge upside. Really ended up being a starter for us as a true freshman last year at linebacker. And you watch him in the spring, and he's gotten even better. I think he's got good size, he's got good length, very athletic. He runs well. But I think the thing that really separates him is he has really good instincts for the linebacker position. I mean, he has a great feel for playing in there, understands how to get off a block. He's just very instinctual football player, really high football IQ player.
The wide receiver position, you had a mixture of tight ends and wide receivers contributing. Who do you have back, and who do you expect to break out this year, if anybody?
I'll start with the receiver position because we lost a few guys there that were productive for us. And that's just a position where we need guys to step up. We need more production at that position. One guy that I think really had a strong spring for us is Jaquio Mitchell, who's from St. George, Dixie High School, transferred to us from Utah State. And he played more and more as last season went on. But I think he's really taken a big jump for us this spring, and I expect big things from him next year. He's a kid who really works hard, tries to do things the right way. Another kid with a BYU connection is Prince Zombo, who's from the state of Arizona, went to BYU as a freshman, transferred to us last year. I think it was a little bit of an adjustment last year, learning the system, still adapting to Utah Tech, but he's another kid who's taken a big jump this spring and had a productive spring for us. Dejon Harrison is a kid who started his career at Texas, played some there as a true freshman, went to UConn, now is at Utah Tech, has battled some injuries since he's been here, but has been healthy this spring. And he shows the talent of why this kid went to Texas out of high school and why he was a freshman. So we hope to have him healthy and productive for us this year. At the tight end position, Caden Eggett returns. He was a backup but played a lot for us last year. We love to use tight ends in our offense, and we'll have multiple tight end sets. He's a kid from Snow College, from Davis High School, and I think he's just going to get better. With Eric Olson moving on to Oregon State, he's going to kind of be our featured guy at tight end, and I expect some big things from Caden this fall.
I have had other coaches tell me that the biggest difference in FCS versus FBS football is in the trenches, just size, ability, and guys that excel at the FCS level on the lines can obviously jump up to the next level very quickly because programs are willing to bring those guys on. How do you feel about your trench play, both offensively and defensively right now?
I think we are getting better. That's one of the things you mentioned that, Jake. That I think that is a big factor in how good of a football team you are. How good are you up front on both the offensive line and defensive line? And those are positions that, we have had to improve. They're just places we got to get bigger. We got to get stronger. We got to get more physical. We got to get more athletic. And I think we are making strides in those areas. You look at both offensively and defensively. I think last year on offense, we ran the ball a little bit better. We protected better than we did my first year here. And a lot of that is due to development on the offensive line. My first year here, we really struggled stopping the run. And that kind of starts up front with your D-line. We made major improvements last year. We're still not great. We're not where we need to be, but we are making improvements in those areas. A couple of guys on the O-line that really stand out. Matthew Snar from Corner Canyon, Cade Draper from Roy, both started as true freshmen last year and really developed into good football players by the end of the year. And I think they're going to be very productive for us this year. One of our top defensive linemen is, Marley Sagapolo from Crimson Cliffs High School here in St. George. Big physical kid that, really works hard, puts great effort in. And he had a good year for us last year, and he's had an even better spring. So those are going to be key positions for us, not only competing against BYU and trying to hang in that game and compete, but for us to have success in the Big Sky as well. The O-line, the D-line, the improvement we make on those two positions is what's going to, determine a lot of our success.
I got two more questions for you, Coach. So you're a former defensive coordinator. So when I'm sure you've at least got a cursory look, and you understand that BYU's got a star quarterback in Bear Bachmeier and the reigning Big 12 offensive player in the year and their running back in LJ Martin. As a defensive coordinator, how difficult is it to prepare for a tandem that is that good?
It's tough because they are very good players. I'll tell you what, going back to my days at Stanford, we recruited the Bachmeiers, and we spent a lot of time recruiting the Bachmeiers. So I'm very familiar with them, very familiar with the family. It's just a family full of just great athletes, great football players. LJ Martin was actually committed to us at Stanford before we had the coaching change. And we thought we had really found a gem in El Paso that maybe a lot of other people didn't know about. And yes, he has turned into exactly the kind of player that we thought that he would be. So, yeah, we're going to have our hands full, preparing for LJ Martin, Bear Bachmeier. I mean, they're Tiger Bachmeier. They're talented football players.
What's your relationship with Kalani Sitake like and the rest of the BYU staff?
I've got a lot of really good friends on that staff. I really, I respect Kalani and Aaron Roderick, what they've done in their careers. And, we've crossed paths many times. We've competed against each other many times. I think they're really good people, and they're really good football coaches. Kelly Papinga played for me at Utah State, and he's one of my really good friends in coaching. I think he's just, such a high character person, such a great person, and a really good football coach too. And, there's just a number of guys there. So yeah, there are a lot of connections on that staff, and it's a really strong staff with a lot of really good people and good football coaches.
Well, Coach, can't thank you enough for taking some time to join us here to talk about Utah Tech. Looking forward to this game in early September. I guess I'll just leave it open to you. Is there anything else you'd like to pass along to BYU fans they need to know about the Trailblazers?
The biggest thing that, I hope for us is that we can go up to Provo and just, compete hard, be a team that plays hard, gives great effort, makes it the best game that we possibly can. I'm excited about Utah Tech. I'm excited about this football program. I think there's a lot of potential down here. There's still a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm very excited about, where this program can go. And we're looking forward to going up to Provo and giving it our best shot.
Coach, thank you again for some time, and look forward to doing this again down the line, hopefully.
Sounds great. Thanks for your time, Jake.
A big thank you once again to Lance Anderson for taking the time to join us here on the podcast. A great look into the realities of an FCS program in this day and age of college athletics. He talks about NIL and the fact that Utah Tech right now simply isn't in a place financially to even offer NIL, is what he said there. So crazy times, but very much, I think, a good feel for what to expect from Utah Tech as they get ready to take on BYU in the Cougars season opener. A big thank you once again to Coach Anderson. A big thank you also to Steve Johnson down there at Utah Tech Athletics for arranging said interview. And we'll be doing all of these. We'll be rolling through all 12 regular season opponents. Up next will be the Arizona Wildcats, Colorado State after that. And we'll kind of roll through them team by team and get you a feel for how each of these programs look and feel coming out of spring ball, and obviously getting a glance ahead to the upcoming football season for BYU. But as always, thank you to all of you for making this program your first listen of the day. If you are a true everydayer, do not miss out on the opportunity to join the Locked On Cougars Everydayer Club. That's lockedoncougars.supercast.com. That's the web address to go to sign up today, or click the link in the show notes below. Make sure you follow the show on social media as well for the latest when it comes to BYU sports, as well as news about the podcast. That's Locked On Cougars on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I'm also available on social media at Jacob C. Hatch, my full name. And as always, thank you for being here with us. If you're watching this on video, we're now going to send you over to the first ever 24/7 national Locked On Network college YouTube channel for more great Locked On content there. Or if you're listening to this on audio, go check out any of the great Locked On podcasts out there. There's your second listen today, but I would recommend Locked On College Football, because yours truly may be making an appearance on that with Spencer McLaughlin. Also Locked On Big 12 with Drake Toll, or Locked On College Basketball. Whatever your floats your boat, check it out. And as always, come back tomorrow and be an everydayer with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.